You've talked a lot about drugs and alcohol and how they influence the brain and that they aren't actually helpful on a spiritual path. But what about traditions that use drugs for spiritual experiences? i.e., the Babas who say marijuana is sacred to Lord Shiva, or people using ayahuasca in Central South America for spiritual ceremonies, etc. Here's the thing with that. There's two pieces. First of all, remember that a spiritual experience, enlightenment, awakening, moksha, liberation, samadhi, nirvana, whatever way we think about it, it's coming back to the self. It's you. It's not like getting a ride, up to the space station so you get to see what it would be like if in a world with no gravity. What does the earth look like from a different viewpoint? Spirituality is not going somewhere. It's coming back to you. And since it's coming back to you, the only thing that's needed is you. And so whether it's very, very elaborate and esoteric and complex practices, whether it's a very, very extensive knowledge of Sanskrit, whatever it may be, these are beautiful things. Ceremonies are amazing. Pujas are beautiful. Sanskrit is an incredible language. And they're not needed for spiritual awakening. They serve different purposes. They're deeply meaningful in their own way. But in terms of your awakening, your enlightenment, it's not that God has preference for people who can speak fluent Sanskrit over those who don't, or has special preference for those who sit very long hours at ceremonies compared to those who don't. Enlightenment is living in the light. It's all about coming back to the truth of who you are. And for that, you are the only one necessary. And so, in terms of alcohol, in terms of the types of drugs we normally speak about, they serve pretty much one point and one point only, which is to numb you from your present circumstances, to give you a very temporary reprieve from your normal circumstances, which, when you wake up the next day and your hangover's gone or the drugs have worn off, you are exactly where you were a few hours ago or a day ago, depending on the half-life of whatever you've ingested. You're exactly where you were, except you're also now hungover, or the lactic acid is depleted in your muscles, or you're exhausted, or whatever, again, the ramifications of that particular chemical might be. But you haven't actually helped yourself. Now we come to the drugs that the question speaks about, which are drugs that, and there's more, pretty much usually the hallucinogenic variety, that are used specifically for the purpose. Not always. I mean, of course, some people use them just to, have a good time and get high, but are also used for the specific purpose of spiritual experiences. Here's the problem with that. At some point, either you have to learn to do it without the drugs, or you have to commit yourself to a life of constantly taking drugs. Those are your only options. If the drug is your pathway in, either you have to keep taking it, or you have to figure out another way in if you want to get back. As most people who have experienced it do, the question is always, how do I get back? See, the problem with getting high is there's always a half-life. Some drugs have longer half-lives than others. But, you take something like LSD, for example. It's, all right, 12 hours the drug's going to last. Ayahuasca, frequently a night. So it's longer than the impact of marijuana, but it's just a matter of hours. Within 10, 12 hours, you're going to come down. And the question then is, when you want to get high again, either you have to ingest it again, or you have to figure out another way. And so it's always going to take you back to the self, unless you say, well, I'm just going to take drugs forever. If that's not what you're looking for, you're always going to have to come back to the self. And so the question becomes, why not start there? Why bother giving the body-mind a crutch, an easy way in? That it's always, nothing you do, unless you have an amazing experience of grace or a very, very sincere practice, nothing you do for many years is going to feel as good as what you got with the chemical. And so you've set yourself up for frustration with your spiritual practice. You've set yourself up for impatience with your spiritual practice. And I don't know why anyone would want to do that. What a lot of people say, even people in whom I have great trust and for whom I have great respect, is that what the drugs give is a glimpse of what's possible. That it at least shows you where you're going and what's possible. And that it then whets the appetite, you could say, for more spiritual practice. In theory, if that's all it were, okay. I mean, I don't have a big moral problem with people taking hallucinogenic drugs for spiritual purposes. I wouldn't suggest it. If someone asked my advice, I would always advise against it. But if what someone is saying is, this is giving me a vision, a window, fine. But the question always becomes, and then what? And then what? How long do you want to keep needing this drug? You've always got to come back to your practice. And the dilemma with what chemicals do to us in our brain is they actually change our brain and render us less likely to be able to have the same experiences that we were having on the drugs and even would have had without the drugs. So for example, heroin works on the same receptors and the same neural circuits as internal chemicals that our own body produces when we are having moments of great joy, great bliss. Well, so if you flood your body with heroin, and it takes up all of your opiate receptors in the brain, the brain responds. Our brains change. So if my brain is now flooded with chemicals that are filling my opiate receptors, what's going to happen is my brain is going to say, oh, wow, there's a lot of this chemical. I don't need so many receptors. The body's always looking to maintain balance. And so what it does is it closes some of the receptors. It renders them less sensitive to the opiate, which is why you keep needing more and more of the drugs. This is how you build up tolerance, why it used to be that one beer got you really drunk. Now you can drink a 6-pack and nothing happens and you have to keep drinking more. This is literally how the body adapts to chemicals. So take heroin a few times, your brain has changed and adapted. Now you want not to use heroin. Now you try to fill your life with things that bring you joy. You watch sunsets. You play with babies. The things that just make everyone smile. Except they no longer make you smile. Because your brain has pretty much dulled its opiate receptors because it was getting so much of it in the form of the heroin. So now, normal happy experiences no longer can make you feel happy. So what do? You take more heroin. Because you can't find happiness without it. And this is the dilemma with using anything chemical to have an experience that is the nature of ourself, that is who we are, is our brains, our ability to interact with consciousness, with ourselves, is physical. It's adapting to things. It's like you get really cold, your body shivers. Well, why does it shiver? It shivers to keep you warm. The more energy it can generate, the warmer you are. Otherwise, why would you shiver in the cold? It's how the body functions. So, with taking hallucinogenic drugs, I would always advise, if what you're looking for is a deep spiritual experience, meditate. Pray. You want ecstasy? Come join us at the Arti. There's so many possibilities. Go to an ecstatic overnight kirtan. There's so much possibility that doesn't require chemicals and that therefore is making you more likely to keep having those experiences because it's opening up the channels inside you. Anything you have artificially, you're going to come down from. So whether it's today or tomorrow or next week or next year, you're going to have to learn to do it anyway. So why not start sooner rather than later?